and welcome to Telling Your Asset Management Story. Today, we're joined by Stacy Watters, the state engineer for South Dakota. Stacy's career began in physics before moving into civil engineering and eventually public service, where she now oversees the wide portfolio of government infrastructure projects. Public sector work brings its own unique challenges, balancing limited resources, large project portfolios, and the responsibility of transparency in decision making. In this episode, we'll talk about building a single source of truth for project data, managing large programs with lean teams, and the role of leadership in public infrastructure.
Stacy, thank you very much for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story here for season 2. Really excited to have a conversation with you today, and I hope you find it as valuable as I know our guests will. We always start by talking about our guests' journeys, because one of the cool things about facility and asset management is the huge variety of paths that people took to get where they are today. And I haven't heard any one or two paths that have been exactly the same. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey, how you got from where you were to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Bill, for having me on here. I'm very excited for our conversation today. And like most kids, I wanted to be an astronaut. So when I first started college, I studied physics. And,
Oh, wow.
it's a clear path from physics to facilities management.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
a lot of people take that. So after I graduated, I decided I wanted to stay at the university and get my engineering degree because who wants to do physics for the rest of their life? So I was a civil engineer in private industry, and that was during that fun times of 2006 to 2008. I was out in Seattle, and so we had that housing market crash. So for a civil engineer, there was a lot of civil engineers getting laid off during that time. I had 2 young kids. I was pregnant with my third. And, just looking at that potentially being laid off, I decided that I wanted stability, more than, worrying about a large paycheck. And I've been with the government ever since. And no one works for the government to get rich, but it is a really good work life balance. So I started with the state of South Dakota 14 years ago. So I started as the engineering manager for the South Dakota Department of the Military, and I managed that maintenance, repair, design, construction for about 26 National Guard facilities. And then 8 years ago, the state engineer position was vacant, and I was offered that position. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm the state engineer for the state of South Dakota. I always throw in a shameless plug, delete it if you have to, but the state of South Dakota is a great employer, and there's no state income tax here.
No problem at all. Shameless plugs are welcome here on our podcast. So, well, and
Yeah.
Stacy, I know you and I met through NASFA, the National Association of State Facility Administrators, and I know you're play a major role right now as the current president and been involved in a long time. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with NASFA and the importance of those industry associations and how it's helped you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the shameless plug for our national organization too. I appreciate that. And yeah, it was something that when I became the state engineer, I started, sitting in on some of the committee meetings and listening to some of the webinars. And I had taken a somewhat passive role in our national organization right up until COVID. And when COVID hit, it was really important to hear what other states were doing, hear how other states were managing their assets. We talked about everything from how are folks cleaning and making sure that their buildings, are going through some form of disinfectant or some form of just even notification. If someone does test positive for COVID, how is that being notified without violating any HIPAA laws? And so it was really important to be involved in hearing how other states were solving some of those problems who do have a much larger portfolio than, little old South Dakota.
Well, that's a great segue because the next thing I really wanted to talk about was just give you a chance to tell our audience a little bit about your portfolio and the different types of buildings and geographic range that you're managing, just to give them a little sense of the what you deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love talking about our portfolio. So, as the state engineer, I'm responsible for vertical construction for state owned buildings. So, what does that mean? That means we do all of the design bidding, and construction administration for any new builds, any maintenance and renovations, maintenance and repair, energy efficiency projects, or even demolitions.
Oh, wow.
Our
Full
threshold,
life cycle.
oh yeah, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And our threshold, I want to say we usually start around the $100,000 mark. So anything that's smaller than that, we just let the building owners, who's ever actually occupying the building, take care of that. But then anything over that 100K, that's when OSC gets involved.
Got it. So it's more
Um,
the O&M for the state individual agency that's responsible for the building. They take care of that small dollar value.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And
Cool.
so the state, we do own just shy of 21 million square feet.
Wow.
So we are adding a lot faster than we're demoing. But we do occasionally demo or sell property. But the square footage, I mean, that square footage is divided between our universities and higher education, our Department of Corrections. I mean, our game fish and parks, they have campgrounds and fisheries that fall under that. Department of Transportation buildings, our rest stops, state fairgrounds, our Capitol complex. As a state, we have two state hospitals that people don't necessarily always think about, or we have, wildland fire campuses because we've got the Black Hills here, and so we do have wildfires that we have to manage. We have a state veterans home and a state veterans cemetery. Um, so yeah, when you encompass all of that, that's how we get to that 21 million square feet. But honestly, the best part of our job is you're never going to see the same thing twice. So you
Right.
could be working in a correctional facility, replacing a boiler that runs 24/7, and you are escorted by a guard the entire time that you are in there. And then you could, 2 days later be working on a solar panel project out at a fishery location, in the middle of the Black Hills. Um, and I always kind of joke, this is my favorite building. We did have to demo it, but it was the building for disturbed women. That was a
Oh,
building that the state owned. So it's no longer on our
interesting.
portfolio, but we still
Yeah.
have the as-built drawings.
Wow. My guess is they probably would have rebranded it if they kept it. So
I am sure that there would have been a lot of rebranding, little marketing on that
yeah.
one.
I've had the opportunity to do some work in, we'll call them psychological hospitals, and certainly the names of said hospitals when they were built were not politically correct, and I'm not gonna quote it here on the podcast or I will get canceled. But it's interesting as you're dealing with those, not just the diversity of the portfolio but also the history, to be able to see how different programs were delivered 50 or 100 years ago compared to today and things like that. That's got to pose a lot of really interesting opportunities, but also challenges. Um, uh, what's been the biggest? I mean, obviously you had your favorite building, but what was sort of the most surprising or unexpected thing that you got a chance to see in the portfolio over time?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I could just narrow it down to one thing. Um, I don't even know if I can say this on the podcast, but there was a military facility. It was some barracks that we were renovating, and the up above the drop ceiling, we found some old beer cans hidden up in there
Right.
that definitely should not have been in those
No,
barracks.
no. I think
But
you're okay as long as you don't name the folks that were in the bed below the
yeah,
ceiling tiles. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but then, we've got some really old tunnels across our campuses, and I think the tunnels are probably my favorite. We do have to spend a lot of time in those tunnels because a lot of our campuses are, yeah, on like a central steam plant, because that's what they did back in the day. We've got, snow and sidewalks, and you have central steam plants, and you'll never have to shovel snow on those sidewalks as long as the tunnels are right below it. But there's definitely some history in those tunnels.
That's neat. That's really neat. So, thinking about having such a diverse portfolio geographically, asset type, user type, program type, and maybe three is an unfair number, but what would you say are the top three asset management challenges that you and your team see across your portfolio, and how are you tackling them kind of today?
Oh gosh, Bill, that's a great question. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this too, but Excel documents. When it comes to asset management, Excel documents, as much as I love a good spreadsheet, they are the bane of our existence because they have served their purpose, but it is time to let them go. I couldn't tell you how many times a department has sent me an Excel document that has their building asset data on there, and it's saved on one person's desktop. And then that department, their asset information doesn't match the Excel document that risk management has, who manages our insurance program. And then that doesn't match the Excel document that our public safety has or our fire marshal has. And so it's the individualized documentation of the assets that's saved in obscure locations that only one or two people are even aware of. That's my number one, Excel documents.
Yeah.
So what is OSE and OSE, Office of the State Engineer? So what are we doing about that? We have recently purchased a software that can be managed and accessed by multiple agencies and departments, but then only updated by a small group of individuals. And that's their job, keeping that data updated, because data is only, as good as, or the software is only as good as the data that's input into it. And it's just, a pinpoint in time for that data. So just making sure that that's constantly updated.
And that you don't call the same building 5 different things in 5 different
Right.
spreadsheets, right? As simple
Right.
as it starts with as simple as that, right? So yeah.
Yes. Well, and I'm guessing there's other facility managers who can relate to this, but a building that has changed names 5 times.
Yeah,
Or
I'm sure. Absolutely.
how many buildings out there are called Lincoln Hall? I'm sure there are thousands of them across this, the nation. But
Absolutely.
even in South Dakota, we've got multiple buildings that are called Lincoln Hall. So yes, having buildings, the naming convention, because a building, sometimes it changes owner, sometimes, it changes its mission, and that name is constantly being updated, kind of like the Disturbed Women building.
Yes, exactly.
But now we can update it in one location on one software, no Excel documents.
That's awesome. That's great.
So that's OSE's solution, but we're only midway through getting all of our data into that software. I mean, 21 million square feet. It's a lot of
It's a lot.
data
Yeah.
to get put in there. But how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So that's number one. Sorry, that was
Yeah.
kind of a long answer. You
No,
asked
no.
for 3.
Yeah, no. Look, if you only have 3 with a portfolio as diverse as yours, look, I'll even give you a bonus 1 or 2 if you want, because there's so many different types of buildings in there that I'm sure there's lots of challenges.
Oh, well, I would say the Excel documents, that's the one I probably complain about the most. But and this kind of goes along the same lines too, but having the asset information in one place where everybody knows where to access it. And it kind of comes back to that software again. And I'm going to give you an example. So we had, gosh, I want to say this was back in 23, and I might get my years wrong. I mean, once you get a little older, your years start to blend together. But we had they call them straight line winds. Everybody who lived through it says it was a tornado that came through a part of eastern South Dakota. And we had some pretty extensive damage to our Dakota State University and also to one of our DOT facilities in Salem, South Dakota. Now, Bill, when I ask you, do you know where Salem, South Dakota is? You probably don't. Most people, even in the state of South Dakota, might not know where Salem, South Dakota is. But even, just knowing where the town is, where is the DOT maintenance shop, right? There's no place for me. So they said, Stacy, we're going to put you on the state airplane. You need to get out there. You need to put your eyes on these buildings and see if we can still work out of them. Or do we need to find a temporary location for these employees to work? The damage was extensive enough to where we weren't sure if we wanted employees in these buildings. So I said, okay, well, I know where Dakota State University is. I can get, there pretty easily. It's a large university, large campus. But I started asking the question. I said, well, where is the DOT maintenance shop in Salem? And nobody could give me an answer. So what do? I jump on Google Earth, and I'm sitting there on Google Earth looking for a salt shed.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
so
goodness.
that is not efficient, right?
No.
And I know I'm not the only one that does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have the correct data all in one location. So we're using our software to, have an address of the location, have the utilities listed in there. If we've got some major damage, do we need to call, MDU, our gas company? Are they a service provider? If there's damage, do we want gas leaking into that space after a tornado? Um, or even just, listing at who's a point of contact for that building. Who do I reach out to?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. No, that single source of truth for, we'll call it tombstone data on your facilities is, just what do we own? I've worked with lots of folks and they give us an asset list and it looks, there's about that much overlap with the beginning one and the end one, because there's a bunch of old buildings that are gone and a bunch of new buildings that weren't on it and everything else. So, no, that's definitely, an important baseline to build from.
I would say the last one here, that I was thinking about is that that concept of doing more with less. So I know I'm not the only one. We're not, facilities management isn't the only one who's been tasked with this, but, in government, nobody wants to grow government. Yet our portfolio is constantly growing, which means, every year we're adding more and more maintenance and repair projects to our portfolios because we must maintain these new buildings, but nobody wants to give us or give, I should say, the departments any more, full-time employees to help perform that work. When all of a sudden you've got a brand new prison complex, put on your portfolio and we need to start maintaining those. Well, doing any of that design, bidding, or construction administration work, that takes time and that's an employee. So, ultimately, we have a choice. We can modify our procedures, become as efficient as possible with technology available, and or we could place those projects on a deferred maintenance list, and we get to it when we get to it. So,
Mhm.
nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting because I guess because you guys sort of deal with the capital in your department and all the maintenance exists within the individual agencies. Is there any synergy between the programs, or is it really kind of hands off, completely separate?
Oh, there absolutely is synergy between.
Oh, good. That's great.
So, we have what we call, facility managers who manage more of that day-to-day M&R. So if they need flooring replaced, if they need a hot water heater replaced, something along those lines. But, fortunately, $100,000 doesn't get you much anymore. You know, so anytime if it's a roof, if it's major boilers, any of the major building components, all of that comes through Office of the State Engineer. Um, but yes, when it comes down to, some of that smaller stuff, they'll still reach out to us for, advice on some of the smaller projects as well.
Oh, that's good. So with that many buildings and that, we'll say low a threshold, because you're right, 100 grand doesn't get you very much. How many projects does your team look after in a year?
At any given time, we have approximately 300 plus active projects.
Cool. And how many people are managing those projects?
There's 16 of us in my office.
Wow.
And in that 16,
Wow.
there's only, not all of those are project managers. So that's our support staff as well.
Oh wow, that there's must be a lot of spinning plates that are just off to the side of the camera there that we can't see.
Well, honestly, our biggest project to date right now is we're working on a $650 million men's prison.
Oh,
Um, so I have just one project manager who's managing that project, and she truly cannot take on anything else because of how extensive that project is.
right. Did you
But
call it the building for disturbed men? Is that?
I will suggest that.
Don't tell them I suggested it.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because everybody wants their name on the side of a new building,
Right.
except for a prison.
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah.
any donors coming forward saying, "Hey, we'll donate money to the new prison project, and we want our name on the side of it." We just,
I can't
I mean,
imagine why.
right?
Oh my, that's funny. Well, yeah, I mean, there's no way somebody could manage more than just that project. And I imagine some of your folks have dozens of small projects, which in some, in some way, managing a big project is hard, but in some ways, managing a bunch of small projects can be even harder because you've got different things at different times and different parts of the program and everything. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's gotta be a frantic kind of place with that many projects going on. So kind of looking to the future, and you sort of talked about thinking you're still going to continue to have to do more with less and things like that. But from where we sit today, looking out the next 5, 10 years, how do you see facility and asset management evolving or changing, not just in the state of South Dakota, but just in general overall, Stacy?
So, Bill, I have a wish list of where I would love to see AI go. And I don't know, maybe the right person needs to hear this and they can develop this for us. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, M&R funding is not going to keep up with the demand and inflation, right? So maintenance and repair dollars in general are usually a pretty high on the chopping block if your funding is not as large as what you would hope it to be. Um, so I think that many departments, along with private industry, are going to try to consolidate their footprint to stretch those M&R dollars and dispose of some of their least utilized spaces. And I could see AI being used to consolidate those department footprints. Um, but I could also see AI being used to select what maintenance and repair projects are the most critical. And if you use a tool like AI, that's taking that emotional aspect out of it, right? So, when you have a building user who thinks that their building, their mission, their space is the most important and therefore should get the most maintenance and repair dollars, and then having to tell them, hey, we only have this much M&R dollars and we have this many projects, you've got that deferred list. So using AI to say, you know what, these are actually your most critical projects. So it's taking that human aspect out of it. But look at how far AI has come just in the past 6 months. Honestly, 5 years from now, could you imagine putting on a pair of like meta glasses and walking through a whole building and allowing the glasses to catalog the condition of your building, including like make, model, serial number of some of your major equipment or like your major building components? Or like using AI to scan your as-built drawings and your technical specifications or your shop drawings, and then pulling out all of that pertinent data and just automatically uploading it to your asset management software.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but for me, that would free up a lot of time for us, and that would
Oh,
help
absolutely.
us eat that elephant a lot faster.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what AI, because a lot of people, and we're doing a bunch of stuff in AI. And when we first started talking about it, all of our staff were like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to replace us all," and our answer was no, we're not. We just want to do more with the same amount of people that we have. Right. So how can we use this tool to do things more effectively, not to replace things that you're doing, but to do it more effectively? So instead of 1x, you can deliver 2x worth of productivity and work. Because people are getting harder to find and people are
Yeah.
getting more and more expensive, and if the technology can do some of the stuff that doesn't require intuition or experience and can just do the memorization and the, as you say, the reading and things like that, then it poses huge opportunities, I think, to reinvent. So
Yeah. Well, and it also takes out the human error of it too. So, like, if you're
yeah.
going through a building and trying to upload data into an asset management software, what if I mislabel some of the building components,
Hmm. Yeah.
versus relying on AI to do that for us? And then we're still there. We still have a job because we still have to fact check it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. Well, and it's interesting, the emotional piece you say, you talk to it as well, right? I find that in my experience, K to 12 schools are the most emotional, other than residential homes, which is different, right? But K to 12 schools hold the most emotion in them. First of all, because you send your kids there, but also because like I've been in meetings and people are like, "Well, my grandfather went there, and my father went there, and I went there, and how dare you try to close the school?" And it's like all but crumbling. around the students, not quite that bad,
Yeah.
but yeah, when it's a human piece, it's like, well, why do you hate us, right? Why are you picking on us? Why aren't you doing stuff for us? But yeah, the
Yeah.
ability to say, look, this is whatever the criteria are, defining it and applying logic to it, I think is a great way to. I mean, I don't think it's going to eliminate the emotion, but I think it can help mitigate a little bit. But I think we're always still going to face it when, somebody's
Yeah.
pet project or pet building doesn't get the attention they think it deserves. But hopefully it'll be a better, easier, a slightly easier discussion. But I doubt it will ever get easy.
Yeah. Well, and also it helps with transparency then too.
Hmm.
Hey, we selected these top projects. This is the M&R budget that we got
Hmm.
or that we received. And this is what AI is telling us the most critical projects are. We
Hmm.
can get a few more years out of your roof, but this boiler no longer can be serviced. Like there are
Yeah,
parts that are no longer manufactured. So we have to replace this boiler. Um,
absolutely.
and then we can be transparent about it. This is
Yeah.
why these projects were selected over your project.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stacy, I want to ask you a bonus question, if you will, And obviously, as we're talking before the show, facility and asset management is still pretty male dominated. It's had some advances in the last 10 or 15 years, but it's still very male dominated. And as someone who's had a really successful career, do you have any advice for females earlier in their career that are looking at facility and asset management as a possible career plan? And what would you tell them as they were making their plans?
Oh, Bill, that is absolutely a great question. Um, so I have five older brothers. So you're correct. This is very much a male dominated environment, even still to this day. And like as you and I have talked previously, it has gotten better. Um, but for me, growing up, I have three older sisters as well. But um, growing up with five older brothers, and then I went to the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, which during that time, for upperclassmen, it was like one female to every 10 males. So you kind of get used to that a little bit, especially if you go into the engineering career field. But the advice that I would give is don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know like I need help or I need to learn. Sometimes we let our ego get in the way and we don't want to say, like, I don't know this. I say that all the time. I don't have knowledge on this topic. Can you help me with it? And so I also spend as much time on a construction site as possible and trying to just kind of normalize seeing a female on a construction site. Now, I'm not picking up a welder and welding along with the guys, but I will walk up behind a welder and ask questions. Not while they're welding, because obviously I don't have the
Yeah,
proper PPE on, but
right.
um, just being able to see what they're doing, why they're doing it, asking questions, being familiar with the schedule. Um, how scheduling works, how poll planning works, just being cognizant of everything from, you know, the safety and OSHA aspect of it, all the way through doing a final completion inspection. You get so much knowledge from just being on site and actually seeing the work be done, because sitting here behind a desk, you're not learning as much as you possibly could. Um, but the best part about it though is like if you go to a conference, there's never a line for the female restroom. So like that's one benefit, right?
That's funny. That's great. Yeah, no, that is that. Having been to a few NASPA conferences, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, um,
Yep.
excellent. Anything else, kind of, Stacy, from the perspective of facility or infrastructure asset management, or advice to folks earlier in their career that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess you kind of alluded to it before, but just being involved in any national organization, whether, if you're heavily involved in K through 12 schools, there are national organizations for just about, every aspect of facility management. Whether it's higher education in universities, there's a national organization for that. If you are a little bit more involved in the procurement management for facilities, there's a national organization for that. And just being involved and learning about or learning from other states, how did you solve this? I think goes such a long way. But then also, the only other advice I would give, and I apologize, changing topics,
No, no,
but
that's okay.
is getting rid of your Excel documents.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Got to
funny.
make that plug.
That's what I'm gonna get you a shirt that says "Just say no to Excel." That's I think. Well, I think one of the things that's come through, Stacy, in terms of, kind of right through from your personal journey through to what you're facing now, through to even the advice, is be curious and collaborate. And I think that's great. That's two great foundations for anybody anytime in their career, and for all facility and asset managers, because honestly, it's the last 10 or 15 years has been pretty crazy. I think the next 10 or 15 years is going to be even more, is going to rock our world even more than the last 10 or 15 has. And that's even without a pandemic, knock on wood. No, I really appreciate the insights you've shared. I'm sure our audience does as well. I thank you all. I thank you so much for your time. And I'm sorry I won't see you at the NASFA conference next week, but do say hello to Mike for me, and hopefully we'll see you in Austin in the summer.
Sounds great. We'll see you in Texas.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Stacy, thanks for sharing your story with us. Your experience shows how important transparency, curiosity, and collaboration are in public sector infrastructure management. By improving how information is shared and decisions are made, teams can deliver projects more effectively and build trust with the communities they serve. Thanks again for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story.